In the next 15 minutes, you're going to experience something most people never survive. You'll be abducted in broad daylight. You'll wake up in a soundproof trailer designed for one purpose: breaking you. And you'll have to make a decision in 17 seconds that determines whether you live or die. By the end, you'll know whether you would have escaped and whether you could have caught the man who built this nightmare. March 22, 1999. Albuquerque, New Mexico. A 22-year-old woman named Cynthia Vigil is working the streets when a man approaches with a badge. He says she's under arrest. She's not. Within minutes, she's handcuffed in an RV, being driven 150 miles into the desert. Her destination: a soundproof trailer filled with surgical tools, chains, and a gynecological chair designed to create maximum pain and terror. The man driving calls it his toy box. The FBI calls him one of New Mexico's most prolific suspected serial killers. This case will test two things: your survival instinct when every psychological weapon is being used against you, and your investigative reasoning when the evidence points to dozens of murders, but not a single body can be found. Most people fail at least one. The man who built this torture chamber was a maintenance worker at a state park. A quiet neighbor. Someone nobody suspected. He spent $100,000 perfecting his system over decades, and he almost got away with it. What stopped him wasn't brilliant detective work. It was 17 seconds of pure survival instinct. It's March 22, 1999. You're standing on Central Avenue in Albuquerque, the main strip where the restaurants and bars light up after dark. The temperatures drop to the 40s now that the sun's gone down, but you're used to it. Your name is Cynthia Vigil. You're 22 years old. You've been working these streets since you were a teenager because there was nowhere else to go. Your mother was murdered when you were 13. Your best friend was killed last year by a client who seemed safe until he wasn't. You have rules. Clear rules that have kept you alive. Number 1. Never get into RVs. Never. They're mobile, soundproof, and you have no control. You only work with cars where you can see the exits. You've never broken this rule. Not once in all the years you've been doing this. But tonight, something's different. You're tired. The kind of tired that makes your judgment foggy. People who later read about what happened to you will reduce you to a statistic: sex worker, drug user, high-risk victim. But here's what they won't know. You're trying to get clean. You've been in and out of treatment. You call your family when you can, though the conversations are hard. You remember everyone's birthday. You're the friend who shows up when someone needs help at 3 a.m. You've survived things that would break most people. Domestic violence that left your facial bones permanently damaged. Your attacker went on to murder someone else. Juvenile detention in both the U.S. and Mexico. The streets of Albuquerque, where 11 women you knew will be found buried in the desert 10 years from now. You're a survivor. You know how to read danger. You've developed instincts that most people will never need. But here's what you don't know. Someone has been watching you, studying you, for weeks, learning your patterns, your schedule, your rules. And tonight, they're going to exploit the one moment when your guard is down. An RV pulls into the parking lot. Your first thought: no, your rule is clear. But then you see her. A woman in her late 30s climbs out, walks toward you with a smile. She's casual, friendly. She says her boyfriend wants to party, asks if you're interested. The presence of another woman makes it feel safer. Women don't usually run sex trafficking operations. Women are allies, not threats. This is your first cognitive error, and it's one that most people would make. You approach the RV. Your gut is telling you something's off, but you can't articulate what. The woman is friendly. The RV looks normal. The man inside seems polite enough. You get in. This is the decision point. In this moment, you're making a calculation. The money you need, the cold outside, the woman's presence making it seem legitimate, your exhaustion clouding your judgment. What you don't see: a fake police badge on the dashboard, carefully positioned, a cattle prod behind the driver's seat, and a man who has done this so many times he can predict your every response. You're barely inside when the man pulls out what looks like a police badge. He says you're under arrest for solicitation. The badge looks wrong. The shape isn't quite right. But before you can process this, Metal handcuffs snap around your wrist. You try to run. One cuff is on your arm. He has the other end. You're pulling, fighting, your fingertips grazing the door handle. That's when the woman comes from behind the curtain. In her hand, a cattle prod. You feel the shock before you understand what's happening. Your muscles seize. Your nervous system overrides your conscious will. This is the involuntary freeze response. Not weakness. Neurobiology. They're dragging you to the back now. You're still conscious, still fighting, but your body isn't responding the way you want it to. You manage to unscrew the cabinet they handcuff you to. Proof that even in crisis, your survival instinct is working. But when the RV suddenly breaks, you tumble forward. The woman appears with a gun. Then him. Then darkness. You don't know how much time passes. When you wake up, you're naked. Handcuffed. Shackled. A leather mask covers your head. No eyes, just holes for your nose and a zipper over your mouth. You can't see. You can barely breathe. And then you hear his voice. Not speaking to you. Speaking about you. On a recording.
Okay, we both know why you've been brought here today. You're going to be kept here naked and chained. I'm going to use you for a sex slave.
The tape goes on for 30 minutes. It describes in clinical detail every single thing that's going to happen to you. It explains that you're going to be raped repeatedly, that you'll be tortured, that screaming won't help because the walls are soundproof, that if you don't cooperate, it will only get worse. This isn't improvised. This is a system, a process. He recorded this tape in 1993. He's been playing it for victims for 6 years. When the mask finally comes off, you see where you are. A trailer, maybe 15 by 20 feet. The walls are covered in soundproofing. Tools everywhere. Whips, chains, surgical instruments, pulleys, clamps. And in the center, a gynecological chair, wired with electrodes. Above you, a mirror mounted to the ceiling. So you can watch everything he does to you. So you can't look away. You've been here less than an hour. You have no idea where you are. No one knows you're missing. You never called family regularly. You're not expected anywhere. Even if someone looked for you, they wouldn't know where to start. This is what he counts on. This is why he chooses women like you. In 72 hours, you will either escape or you will disappear. For the next 3 days, you will experience something that breaks most people. Methodical, calculated torture designed not just to hurt you, but to erase your sense of self that they are. David Parker Ray, that's his name, though you don't know it yet, straps you to that gynecological chair for hours at a time. Electric shocks to sensitive areas. Surgical tools used in ways they were never intended. Medical speculators expanded beyond tolerance. Whips, chains, implements he designed himself, some labeled with their specific purpose. The rest of the time, you're chained to a pole by a dog collar padlocked around your neck. The chain is exactly long enough to reach a bucket. That's your bathroom. Long enough to reach the bed where he rapes you repeatedly. Not long enough to reach the door. The woman, her name is Cindy Hendy, you'll learn later, helps him. Sometimes she operates the tools. Sometimes she watches and laughs. Sometimes she participates. But here's what the news reports won't capture. The psychological torture is worse than the physical. The tape he played you wasn't just description, it was prophecy. Everything he said he would do, he does. Exactly as described. This creates a kind of learned helplessness. If everything on the tape is true, then the part about killing you must be true too. But something in you refuses to accept that ending. Even as your body breaks, your mind is working. You're studying your prison. You're listening to their conversations. You see rules posted on the walls. Don't trust a chained captive. That tells you something crucial. Other women have tried to escape. Some succeeded enough that he felt the need to write down warnings. You notice that Hendy gets excited easily. When she gets a phone call about potential business deals, she forgets herself. You notice that Ray leaves for work. He has a job, maintains a normal life. You notice the keys they use to lock your padlock, and you see where they put them when they're not using them. You're creating a map, a plan, a window. This is survival psychology in action. When most people imagine being in this situation, they think they'd fight immediately. But research on captivity shows that successful escapees don't fight, they wait. They observe. They find the vulnerability in the system. You're doing exactly what you need to do. But can you do it before he tires of you? Day 3. You've lost track of time. There are no windows, no clocks. But your body tells you it's been around 72 hours. You're weaker, dehydrated, covered in injuries. That's when Hendy's phone rings. She answers it in the other room. You can hear her voice pitch up. Someone's offering her a deal, maybe money, maybe drugs. She's excited enough that she makes a mistake. When she left the room, she left the keys on the coffee table, 3 feet from where you're chained. Your chain won't reach, but your legs will. You prop your feet on the table, drag it closer. The scraping sound is loud in the soundproof room. Every second feels like an hour. Your hands close around the keys. You have maybe 4 keys to try. Your fingers are shaking from exhaustion, from fear, from the adrenaline that's flooding your system. Remember those rules posted on the walls? Don't trust a chained captive? He wrote that rule because he knew this moment could happen. He just didn't know Hendy would forget. You're on the 2nd key when Hendy comes back. She sees you, sees the keys. She grabs a lamp and starts beating you with it. You feel the impacts, but the adrenaline has made you partially numb. Your fingers keep working the keys. 3rd key. Doesn't fit. She's screaming. You're bleeding. The padlock is still secure. 4th key. The lock clicks open. For the first time in 72 hours, you're not chained. But you're still naked, bleeding, exhausted. And she's between you and the door. You grab 2 things, the phone and an ice pick from the floor near the chair. You dial 911 with one hand while you stab her in the neck with the other. She grabs her neck. You run. From the bedroom to the living room, from the living room to the door. Your hand finds the handle. You turn it. The door opens. You have no idea where you are. You're naked except for a steel collar and chains. You're bleeding, but you're outside. In 17 seconds, you went from certain death to possible survival. Would you have had 17 seconds of clarity in that moment? After 3 days of torture and drugs, you have no idea where you are. You're naked except for a steel collar and chains. You're bleeding, but you're outside. In 17 seconds, you went from certain death to possible survival. Would you have had 17 seconds of clarity in that moment? After 3 days of torture and drugs, you run up the road. A car approaches. You wave your arms, screaming for help. The driver, a woman, sees you covered in blood, naked, wearing a metal collar. She rolls up her window, leaving it cracked an inch, and drives away. You keep running. Another trailer. Lights are on. You don't knock. You just burst through the door. There's an elderly woman at the sink, washing dishes. Her husband appears from a back room. They see you, bloody, naked, collar locked around your neck, chains dangling, and they freeze. Then the woman moves. She's calm, remarkably calm. She wraps you in a robe. She tells her husband to get a blanket. She calls 911, and her husband tells you something you'll never forget. I have a gun. I won't let him get you. These strangers become your protectors, your guardian angels. When police arrive 12 minutes later, you tell them everything. About the RV, about the trailer, about the man and woman who held you, about the torture chamber. The officers exchange looks. They've never heard anything like this. But the evidence is undeniable. You're wearing it around your neck. They arrest David Parker Ray and Cindy Hendy within hours. And when they search the property at Bass Road in Elephant Butte, what they find makes seasoned investigators physically ill. You're no longer Cynthia Vigil. You're now part of the team that has to make sense of what you're about to discover. It's March 23, 1999. You're an FBI agent assigned to the Albuquerque field office. Or maybe you're a New Mexico State Police investigator. Or a forensic technician preparing to process a crime scene. The call came in last night. Escaped kidnapping victim, sexual torture, suspects in custody. You've worked violent crimes for years. You think you've seen the worst of what humans do to each other. You haven't. You're about to enter what you and your team will privately call Satan's Denver, and what you find inside will haunt you for the rest of your career. The trailer sits behind David Parker Ray's modest home at Bass Road, Elephant Butte. From outside, it looks like a standard mobile unit. Maybe storage. Maybe a workshop. You put on protective gear, gloves, booties, the works. Someone opens the door. The smell hits first. Disinfectant. Sweat. Something else you can't identify. Then your eyes adjust. The gynecological chair is in the center, exactly as Cynthia described. It's modified, restraints at every joint, electrodes attached, ceiling mirror positioned above. Around the room, whips organized by length, chains sorted by gauge, surgical tools arranged with military precision. Some of the tools are labeled. Vaginal spreader, modified. Breast clamps, maximum tension. Some are homemade, nails melted into plastic and bent into hooks. On the wall, handwritten rules. Don't trust a chained captive. Gag securely before electrodes. Drug dosage. 2 cubic centimeters per 100 pounds body weight. Then you find the cassette tape. The one Cynthia mentioned. You play it. And for 30 minutes, you listen to David Parker Ray's voice calmly, methodically describing his process. This isn't confession. This is instruction manual. Over the next 48 hours, you and your team catalog everything. Physical evidence. 400+ pieces of jewelry and women's clothing. Potential trophies. Videotapes showing assaults on at least one unidentified woman, later identified as Kelly Garrett. Detailed journals describing abductions, torture methods, and disposal techniques. Blueprints for the toy box showing years of planning and modification. Drug supply. Sodium pentothal, phenobarbital, barbiturates, fake police badge. Cattle prod with Cynthia's DNA. You find something else. Maps. Hand-drawn maps showing locations around Elephant Butte Lake. Spots marked with X's. Ray's handwriting notes. Disposal Site 1. Disposal Site 2. You send cadaver dogs to every marked location. They hit on 3 spots. You excavate. You find bones. Some animal. Some not clearly animal. One fragment in 2011 will be identified as human, a female leg bone, but it won't match any missing persons report. No bodies. No identifiable remains. Nothing that proves murder. Remember that fake police badge? Cynthia mentioned seeing it on the dashboard of the RV. That badge becomes crucial. It explains how Ray could approach women in public without raising alarm. He'd done this before. Many times. As news of Ray's arrest spreads, more women come forward. Their stories are eerily similar. Angelica Montano had gone to Ray's house to borrow cake mix. She lived nearby. He seemed like a friendly neighbor. Ray drugged her, tortured her for 4 days with Hendy's help, then dumped her on a highway. She was picked up by an off-duty law enforcement officer who thought her story was too outlandish to be true. He left her at a bus stop. She did report it, but there was no follow-up, no investigation. She was an addict. No one believed her. Kelly Garrett. You identify her from one of the videotapes. Her ex-mother-in-law recognizes a distinctive tattoo. Garrett was a friend of Ray's daughter Jessie, who drugged her beer at a bar in July 1996, called her father to pick them up, and delivered her to the toy box. Ray tortured her for 4 days, then slit her throat and left her in the desert to die. She survived. She told her husband. He thought she was lying about cheating and filed for divorce. She went to police. They thought she was delusional. Both women's stories were on file. No one connected them until now. Think about that. 2 women reported being kidnapped and tortured by the same man. Law enforcement took reports, and nothing happened. Why? Because the women were sex workers, addicts, or had credibility problems. This is how predators operate. They choose victims society won't search for. Your investigation reveals that Ray didn't work alone. Cindy Hendy, 37, Ray's girlfriend, met him while doing community service at Elephant Butte State Park. Actively participated in abductions and torture. Initially confesses to everything, implicates others, then recants when Ray sends love letters from jail. Glenda Jessie Ray, his own daughter, helped abduct at least 2 victims, including Garrett. Used her friendships with women to gain trust, then delivered them to her father. Dennis Roy Yancey, friend and accomplice, confesses to murdering Marie Parker in 1997, strangled her, and buried her body. This is the only murder you can prove, but it's not Ray's charge, it's Yancey's. Ray claims in his journals to have killed 40 to 60 women. Henny tells you she knows of at least 14 murders and offers to show you burial sites. You excavate. Nothing. The bodies are gone. And without bodies, you can't prove murder. Your case hits obstacles that seem designed to protect the predator. Obstacle 1. A judge rules that the cases against Ray must be tried separately, one trial for each victim. This means you can't use Montano's testimony to corroborate Garrett's, or vice versa. Each woman stands alone against Ray's defense. Obstacle 2. Ray's defense is that the toy box was part of his fantasy life, that all the women consented, that the sex was consensual S&M play. This defense might have worked if not for the audio tape, which explicitly describes non-consensual abduction. Obstacle 3. Garrett's first trial ends in mistrial. 2 jurors say they find her story unbelievable. The drugs Ray used caused her memory to be fragmented. Under cross-examination, her testimony has gaps. Obstacle 4. Angelica Montano dies of pneumonia and heart failure before she can testify in person. She was 28 years old. Her deposition is used instead, but it lacks the impact of live testimony. You're beginning to understand. Ray engineered a perfect system. Choose victims society discredits. Use drugs that cause amnesia. Leave no bodies. Keep everything inside a soundproof box. It's methodical, clinical, almost perfect. After a retrial, Ray is convicted on all 12 counts related to Garrett's abduction. A week into Vigil's trial, he accepts a plea deal. David Parker Ray is sentenced to 224 years in prison. He'll die there, except he won't. 8 months after sentencing, he has a heart attack in his cell on May 28, 2002. He was 62 years old. He dies before revealing where any bodies are buried, before naming all his victims, before giving families closure. The FBI continues to investigate. In 2011, they find a human leg bone in Elephant Butte Lake, female, but not matching any missing person report. In 2020, they publish photos of the 400-plus pieces of jewelry found in the toy box, hoping someone will recognize something belonging to a missing loved one. Most items remain unclaimed. Most victims remain unidentified. Most questions remain unanswered. You now know what happened. But the more important question is, what does this case teach us that we can actually use to protect ourselves and others? Let's examine 3 psychological layers: the predator who built this system, the victim who broke it, and the investigators who almost lost the case. David Parker Ray was born November 6, 1939, in Belen, New Mexico. Raised primarily by his grandfather after his parents' separation when he was 10. His father was violent and alcoholic and exposed young David to sadistic pornography, images that would shape his developing sexuality. Bullied in school for shyness around girls. Developed elaborate sexual fantasies involving domination and pain. Confided to his first wife that he'd committed his first murder in 1957 at age 18. Kidnapped a woman, tied her to a tree, tortured, and killed her. His 4 marriages all ended in divorce. He maintained steady employment as a mechanic. To neighbors and co-workers, he was polite, helpful, competent. He had coffee with colleagues every morning at the same gas station. Forensic psychologists who evaluated Ray identified him as a sexual sadist, someone who derives primary gratification from the suffering of others. This is distinct from someone who acts in rage or impulse. Sexual sadists are organized. They plan. They perfect their methods over time. They're capable of maintaining normal facades while living double lives. And critically, they escalate. Ray spent decades building and refining the toy box. This wasn't sudden. This was evolution. This case destroys the myth of the obvious monster. Ray looked like everyone's harmless neighbor. That was his greatest weapon. Victim psychology and survival. Cynthia Vigil's escape wasn't luck. It was tactical brilliance under conditions that shut down most people's cognitive function. When Cynthia was first shocked with the cattle prod, her body froze. This wasn't cowardice. This was her nervous system being overridden. The freeze response is one of 4 survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and it's involuntary. But here's what's remarkable. Even while frozen, Even while being tortured, Cynthia's brain never stopped working. She observed. She memorized. She identified patterns. She found the vulnerability in Ray's system. Think about your own survival skills. In Cynthia's position, drugged, tortured, exhausted, would you have had the mental clarity to observe and plan? Or would the trauma have overwhelmed your cognitive function? There's no wrong answer. The fact is, most people shut down completely under that level of stress. Cynthia didn't. That's what makes her extraordinary. Today, Cynthia Vigil Jaramillo runs Street Safe New Mexico, an organization that protects sex workers and trafficking victims. The Women's Society discards. The women Ray targeted. She uses her survival to save others. Investigative failures and lessons. The investigation reveals something deeply uncomfortable. This case could have been stopped years earlier. Failure point 1. Dismissed victims. 2 women reported Ray before Cynthia escaped. Angelica Montano in 1996. Kelly Garrett in 1996. Both told law enforcement they'd been kidnapped and tortured. Both reports were filed and forgotten. Why? Because investigators made judgments about credibility based on substance abuse history, sex work involvement, inconsistent memories caused by Ray's drugs, outlandish details that were actually true. This is victim selection at its most insidious. Ray chose women he knew investigators would dismiss. And he was right. Failure point 2. Jurisdictional gaps. Ray operated across New Mexico, picking up victims in Albuquerque, 150 miles from Elephant Butte, sometimes in other states. No central database connected the cases. Each was treated as isolated. How many other victims were never reported at all? The broader pattern. Between 2001 to 2009, 11 women were found buried in the desert outside Albuquerque. The West Mesa murders. Almost all were sex workers. Almost all had gone missing without significant searches. That killer was never caught. Universal lessons. What does this case teach us that we can actually use? Lesson 1. Predators look normal. Ray had steady employment, friendly relationships, a normal appearance. He'd been doing this since the 1950s. The monsters don't announce themselves. Trust your instincts over appearances. Lesson 2. Have rules and follow them. Cynthia had survival rules. She broke them once. That nearly killed her. Whatever your safety protocols are, follow them. Every time. No exceptions. Lesson 3. The freeze response isn't failure. If you freeze under threat, you're not weak. You're human. But you can train yourself to maintain cognitive function even while frozen. Observe. Plan. Wait for your moment. Lesson 4. Believe victims, especially imperfect ones. The women who reported Ray were telling the truth. Investigators dismissed them. How many women would still be alive if someone had listened to Angelica Montano in 1996? This isn't about paranoia. It's about awareness. About understanding that evil doesn't look like we expect it to. So, could you have escaped? Honestly, maybe. Cynthia had specific advantages. She'd survived violence before. She knew how predators operate. She had street-smart instincts honed by years of danger. And even with all that, her escape came down to Hendy making one mistake and Cynthia having 17 seconds of absolute clarity. Could you have solved it as an investigator? That's easier to answer. You could have, if you'd believed the women who reported him. Angelica Montano gave you the address. Kelly Garrett gave you his name. The solution was right there. The failure was listening. The real lesson isn't about surviving the toy box. It's about understanding that somewhere right now, another David Parker Ray is operating. Choosing victims society won't search for. Perfecting his system. Counting on being dismissed. The question isn't whether you could escape. It's whether you'll pay attention when someone tells you they need help. If this case taught you something about predator psychology or survival instinct, or if you caught any of those 3 details I planted early that became crucial later, let me know in the comments. And if you know someone who's vulnerable, who's working the streets, who might be targeted, share Cynthia's story with them. Street Safe New Mexico exists because Cynthia knows what it's like to be discarded by society. She's proof that you can survive and become the person who saves others. We love having you here. If you want to join our growing community, make sure you subscribe right now. If you have friends who would enjoy this content, please share this video with them. And hey, leave a like. We appreciate every single one.